My name is Sally, not my real name. Back in 1986, when I was 15, my father was a state trooper in the Deep South. I do not want to disclose the state because my father was a well-known and well-respected peace officer in his day. He was assigned to a rural outpost and was responsible for hundreds of miles of state highway covering a lot of hills and forested areas. So my mother and father decided to rent a small house, more like a wooden shack, nearby his highway patrol station, rather than live in the city and have Dad come home every other week. The house was off the main highway and at the end of an old logging road. The house was surrounded by deep, dark woods on all three sides. The nearest neighbors were miles away from us on either side. We were out in the middle of nowhere. It was an old one-story wooden two-bedroom house. Not as nice or as sturdy as a log cabin. In the back of the house was a small, stand-alone, narrow wooden structure. The landlord said it was built as a small barn, but it could be used to store the car, a sort of makeshift garage. The house was not much to look at, but the price was right for my dad. Cheap. This house was so off the beaten path that we did not have telephone service. My dad left my mother and I with a walkie-talkie tuned into the state police band in case of an emergency. The house barely had lights and running water. Everything seemed to be broken or on the verge of breaking down. We also had no trash pickup, so we either had to burn our trash or take it into town and dump it there. My dad decided not to burn our trash, to prevent the possibility of a forest fire. My father would be gone most nights and back around 6 in the morning. My mom and I fell into the habit of sleeping together in my parents' bedroom because my mother did not like to sleep alone. One night, a week or so after we first moved in, I got up to use the restroom around 3 in the morning when I heard what sounded like somebody mumbling outside coming from the direction of the garage. I put my ear to the back of the wall of the house to listen to the mumbling. Then, all of a sudden, it just seemed to stop. I only heard the owl hooting in the distance. I just returned to bed without giving it a second thought. The next morning I told my mom what I had heard, and she just dismissed it as the wind whistling. A few weeks later, my father was getting home from a late night patrol when he was parking the car in the garage. As he pulled in, he noticed the trash bags we had stored in the back of the garage had been torn apart and scattered all over the garage floor. I remembered it distinctly because I was the one that had to clean it up. My dad said it must be raccoons or some other type of scavenger. My dad's solution to this was buying 2 new aluminum cans from the hardware store in town. He instructed my mom and me to put all the trash in a trash bag first, then put it in the can and close the lid tight. He claimed this would keep the raccoons from smelling the garbage and they would not come in the garage looking for food. It sounded logical to me. Needless to say, this seemed to work. The following week, my dad had to take his car to get serviced in town and had to leave it for a few days. So the trash started piling up and it smelled mighty bad. A day or two later, my mother discovered that the cans had been tipped over and the trash had been rummaged through. My mom complained to my father and finally decided to install a lock on the old wooden doors to the garage. On the following Wednesday night, it was around 11, Mom and I had just finished watching a movie on TV, and we decided to go to sleep. She told me to take the trash out to the garage and gave me the key to the lock. I grabbed the trash from the kitchen while my mom walked into her bedroom to start changing into her nightgown. The house only had a front door, so you had to walk out the door and turn right to go around the side of the house, then walk about 20 feet to the garage. I started to turn the corner and stopped dead in my tracks at what I saw next. I saw a large, dark, and hairy figure standing with its back to me in the doorway of the garage. It looked like a gorilla, but it stood upright on two legs. I heard a loud mumbling like human speech coming from this thing. It suddenly turned, like it became aware of me, and stared at me. I could not make out any facial features, but its two eyes reflected the moonlight like a dog or a cat. I let out a scream, dropped the bag of garbage, turned, and ran back to the house. As I shut the door, I heard a big hard bang from the garage. My mom ran into the living room and asked what was going on. I heard you scream. And I told her that there was an intruder breaking into the garage. She quickly went to the nightstand by the bed and grabbed the walkie-talkie and my dad's spare service revolver. Mom then radioed the state police dispatcher and radioed the break-in. Then my mom grabbed me by the hand and we locked ourselves into the hall closet. We both sat there in the dark, quiet and scared. A highway patrol car came within 20 minutes. My dad was on an auto accident call miles away down the highway. The two troopers first made sure Mom and me were okay. Then they had to look around the property. The tall trooper came back first. We quickly mentioned that my dad was a fellow state trooper. He said that the door had indeed been forced open and the lock broken. There was nothing but turned over trash cans and garbage everywhere. Next, the trooper pulled out a black notebook and wanted to take my statement. I hesitated at first, and when I got to the part of the big black hairy on two legs, my mom turned with a shocked look and said, "You didn't tell me that part." That's when the young trooper ran back to the house, pulled the tall trooper aside, and started to whisper to him. I heard him say, "There are two sets of tracks." The tall trooper said, "Better get on the radio to dispatch. Tell them we have arrived on the scene and are investigating." The young trooper then ran back outside to use the car radio. The tall trooper sat us down and said that he officially was not supposed to tell us this. But since my dad was a trooper, he thinks we should know the truth. This was probably a Bigfoot looking for food. "Y'all know what a Bigfoot is?" the trooper asked. My mom said, "I think so." I just nodded my head. Yes, my partner found two sets of different sized tracks behind your place. I felt hairs on my neck stand up. The mumbling must have been communicating to the other Bigfoot already in the garage. My God, they can communicate. I felt sick. We got a lot of sightings of those things all around here, these parts. As far as we can figure it, they seem to be wandering down from the national park. Now, don't ask me what these things really are. I don't know. Sometimes these things are harmless and sometimes they aren't. Trust me, this place is not safe for two women to be left alone. I don't recommend you stay here. They'll probably be back. The next day, my dad told us that he had confirmed what the trooper told us that night before, that these things do exist and are roaming all around this area. He was told by his sergeant never to mention the word Bigfoot or monster ever again, and if he is asked, it was bears poking around our place that night. I just sat there staring at my dad without being able to even speak. He told us never to speak of this ever again to anyone. My mom and me went to live with an aunt of hers 2 counties away for the next year while my dad was assigned to that area. During the year he was stationed there, my dad told us that he would take countless reports and sightings of the beast, serious missing persons reports, and at least one bizarre, unexplained death, as part of his job as a trooper of that area. This is my piece of the truth. Now it's yours.